Welcome to the Bite-Sized Storytelling Show, brought to you by Commaful.com, where we bring you techniques, advice, and stories that will help you on your writing journey. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to our special guest.
Hi Commaful, Jen Haskin here, author and editor, and we're going to start a two-part series called Breaking Up Info Dumps Like a Bad Romance. This week is part 1 and next video will be part 2. Let's get started. So first, what is an info dump? It's when a piece of narrative is filled with information that describes the character or the world or the plot in a big chunk of text that doesn't include current character speech or action, kind of like flashbacks, but hang on to that, we'll get back to that later. Anytime you have more information than story, or I guess a lot of plot without action, it becomes a dump of information. And that is one thing you want to avoid. It can throw the reader out of the story. For example, I see a lot of writers give scene information in dumps. As a new writer, it always confused me when an editor would say about my own books, break up this info dump, we don't need all this information. And then they would go on to say, what does this other thing look like? Show us more. And I'd think, how am I supposed to show you more when you don't already like the bit that I have and think it's too much? It can be confusing, to be sure, and the difference can be very subtle. But what the editor and the publisher want are bite-sized bits of the world snuck in with cunning intention, woven into the story as asides. When the boy crosses to the attic window, don't miss this opportunity for world building. As he walks, do his feet leave prints in the dusty floor? Does he walk across an oriental rug? Are the wood planks, once shiny wood planks on the floor, now dull with age? Those little bits of a sentence can tell us the state of the whole room without needing to give a lot of superfluous information. I talk about this a lot, but give us everything the character notices as they notice it, and nothing that they don't. We don't need to know every detail of the room. But as in that last sentence with the dusty floor, you can have the character take 1 or 2 actions and give us a whole lot of information. Imagine this. A character is sitting in a dilapidated chair in the small library, its stuffing bursting from a hole in the back cushion pushed out by the end of a spring. The character leans back and the spring digs into their shoulder. Ouch! The character reacts by leaning forward and propping their elbows on their knees, frowning in thought. They shiver from the breeze coming in the open window. The character reaches over to close the old window, covered in chipped white paint, but it's stuck. They slide their fingertips over the cold, fogged glass, remembering last fall when Mother was still alive. Now, how many things did we learn from that paragraph of basically 2 actions, sitting back and getting poked and trying to close the window? In such a paragraph, we would normally get the character's name and or gender. But besides that, we know they're in an older house, and the fact that it has a library means it's probably a bigger house. But it's in disrepair, and the chair is falling apart, and the window is stuck. The character isn't feeling happy as they're thinking, and that somehow lends itself to their recollection of their mother's last year. Knowing that the glass is cold, but the room is warm, and fogging the glass, and the breeze is chilly, lends the season to fall, especially as the character reminisces about last fall. We got a lot more information than we even realized because it was sewn into the story seamlessly. We know their mother died a year ago and that it still affects them. That's 8 things. And the best part about it is that it raises subconscious questions in the reader's mind, such as, are they in their mother's old house? If it's a big house, was there an inheritance? Since it's in disrepair, was there more debt than money left over? Since they're still in the broken down old house, does that mean they need to live there? Do they live there? Why are they so sad? What about the rest of the family? Why are we here and in this room? Has it been a year or only 6 months? How'd the lady die? What's happened in the last year or however long since Mother died? You want to get your reader interested, invested in your story. You want them to have these questions in their subconscious, questions that they feel they need an answer to. That keeps them reading to see what happens. World building info dumps. Let's try something that I see a lot. I'm making this up as I go, so give me some grace. But what if Jill shows up to Susan's old refurbished farmhouse with a neighborhood welcome gift and they have some coffee? This is what I often see. Not necessarily correct, but what I would often see. Jill stepped up to the porch of the remodeled old farmhouse and thought of how nice the new paint job looked. This house hadn't been painted since she'd moved in. She rang the doorbell and stood back to wait. When Susan opened the door, Jill handed her the bottle of wine and tray of brownies she'd made with her daughters yesterday. The house was a 2-story with the formal living room, roomy kitchen, and comfortable family room on the main floor, and the bedrooms upstairs. Hardwood flooring throughout the house was shiny and freshly waxed, but covered in area rugs. Jill wondered if Susan had kids. Susan invited Jill into the foyer and took the gifts, and gestured down the hall to a kitchen decorated with yellow sunflowers and cobalt blue vases. "Come on in," Susan said, waving to the table. Jill took a seat. The backyard was visible through the window, and she could see a large dog pouncing in the grass. Must have moles, Jill thought. Okay, although we get a large number of description dumps, we still don't know much about the story or how any of this relates to it. All we know is the description of Susan's floor plan, which Jill can't know, and that Jill is now sitting at Susan's kitchen table looking at the dog in the backyard. But we don't feel anything. There's no emotion tied to any of these descriptions, and the story has no atmosphere or classifying genre tied to the situation. So we need to get our reader emotionally invested in this story. From here, the paragraph I just read, it will depend on what kind of story you're telling as to how you might break this section up. Don't forget, you can use action and dialogue to share the world as well. So let's redo that previous entry, first as a women's fiction. I'm going to read this over again. Jill stepped up to the porch and thought how nice the fresh blue-gray paint looked, framed by the white painted wraparound porch, almost chic. Jill had always thought her more modern home prettier, but had always envied her neighbor's porch. She rang the doorbell and stood back to wait. Would the new neighbors be any more anal retentive about her husband's late hours and his company car's lights in their windows at 3 a.m.? The new neighbor, Susan, opened the door, dressed like she was going to a society luncheon, in pressed slacks. "Hi, Jill, won't you come in?" Jill handed her the bottle of wine and tray of brownies she'd made with her daughters yesterday. "Welcome to the neighborhood." Susan took the gifts and stepped back into the foyer, making room for Jill to pass. The house, an old 2-story farmhouse, opened to a formal living room like Jill's on the left. A curling handrail ascended with the staircase on the right, waxed and polished, just like the hardwood flooring surrounding them, sporting a collage of area rugs, the dark swirls of grain striping the cherry planks. When did she have time to polish? Jill wondered. Susan gestured down the hall with her elbow. "Come into the kitchen. I just made a fresh pot." The kitchen's walls, shelves, and decor included giant yellow sunflowers and cobalt blue vases. There were 3 thumps on the ceiling above her, and Jill looked up at the antique light fixture. "Kids," Susan rolled her eyes with a light laugh and motioned to the table. "Have a seat." Jill perched on the edge of a high-backed chair, nearly falling off the high seat cushion. She accepted a mug made of green pottery and sipped the Colombian brew. It was her favorite. Maybe they weren't so different after all. Through the window she could see a large dog pouncing in the grass. Must have moles, Jill thought with a smile. Yeah, we're the same. Okay, see how that went in a focus towards a more friendly conversation between women. Let's try that same segment, but with a horror story. Jill hesitated up the 3 rickety steps to the porch. The wood protested with a creak that set Jill's nerves on edge. Before she lost her courage, she rang the doorbell and stepped back. This house stood sentinel at the end of their block, as it had done for all the years Jill had lived there. a reminder that things weren't always right. The last tenants hung themselves in the attic years ago, the renters before them involved in a murder-suicide, and Jill had never been inside the house. The new neighbor, Susan, opened the door in sweats, balling an apron behind her. "Hi, Jill, won't you come in?" Jill held out the bottle of wine and tray of brownies she'd made with her daughters yesterday. "Welcome to the neighborhood." Susan tossed the crimson-soiled apron behind the front door and took the gifts, making room for Jill to pass. The house opened to a formal living room like Jill's on the left. It was eerily similar, down to the pattern on the couch. What the hell? A curling handrail ascended with the staircase on the right, waxed and polished. What's up there? As she watched, a door upstairs slowly closed, one eye visible. Susan gestured down the hall with her elbow. "Come into the kitchen. I just made a fresh pot." The kitchen's walls, shelves, and decor sported sunny yellow flowers in cobalt blue vases. It was overly cheery in a tried-too-hard-to-look normal kind of way. There were 3 heavy thumps on the ceiling above her, and Jill's gaze shot to the antique light fixture. Susan chuckled nervously. "Kids," she motioned to the table. "Have a seat." Jill hadn't seen anyone else here but the couple. Maybe they were babysitting? She couldn't put her finger on why the perfectly waxed floors and modern area rugs had her feeling so off, but something wasn't right. She perched on the edge of a high-backed chair, nearly falling off the high seat cushion. Susan handed her a mug made from green pottery, and she sipped the dark brew. Maybe they were just normal people who didn't realize they'd bought the creepiest house in the division. Through the window, Jill could see a large dog pouncing in the grass. "You have moles, too?" Jill nodded toward the window at the dog, now digging feverishly. "They're making your dog crazy." "We don't have a—" "Oh, my God!" Susan ran out the back door with a wooden spoon and a pot, banging and shooing the dog away. She came back in with her hair in her face. She brushed the locks from her eyes and laughed lightly. "Whew, sorry about that. My husband doesn't want animals digging around on the property." "Oh, then you'll need a fence." "Yes, we do." All those details in the first segment weren't necessary. They weren't really details we needed. In the 2 rewrites, we easily show that the house had 2 stories. We didn't need to know it was a refurbished old farmhouse. We didn't need to know its floor plan. The details that are necessary will change as the story you write changes. Those thumps on the ceiling can confirm a question the character may have, even if they don't realize it, like I wonder if they have children, or they could be an ominous noise. Your tone will determine what details you want to include or stress in the building of your fictional world. Commaful has another video about world building, but the gist of it is, anything and everything you include in your story, every detail, is carefully chosen to be there, and somehow moves the story forward. It includes the main point of view character's senses, all 5, and sometimes a 6th. It's how that character experiences their world. That's the end of part 1 for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Again, my name is Jennifer Haskin, and if you want to know more, feel free to go to my website, www.jenniferhaskin.com. Thank you.
If you found this interesting, be sure to like, subscribe, and give a special thanks to our volunteer instructor. Reviews and likes really go a long way and help us provide more awesome writing resources to the Commaful community. If you aren't on Commaful yet, you can join a community of poets, short story authors, and fan fiction writers on Commaful.com.